It took the Switch 2 just 13 months to sell almost 24 million units, surpassing the GameCube's entire lifetime sales. No Nintendo console has ever moved faster through its first 5 quarters. Now look at what runs on it. Cyberpunk 2077, Star Wars Outlaws, and Final Fantasy VII Remake, all built for hardware that pulls 200 watts from a wall socket, yet playing on a chip you hold in your hands. Every publisher with a back catalog wants a piece of that install base, but most won't build those versions in-house. Instead, they hire someone else to do the work, making porting one of the busiest corners of the industry. Nintendo moved 3.82 million Switch 2 consoles between April and June of 2026. In the quarter before that, the Switch 2 outsold the PlayStation 5 by around 1 million units, and Sony has been selling the PS5 for 5 years. Ports carried a lot of that momentum. Reviewers who spent a decade calling Nintendo versions compromised started calling these ones good. That reception feeds the next decision. A publisher watching Cyberpunk hold together on Switch 2 has a reason to greenlight their own port. Then the next publisher watches that one. The 2026 calendar shows the result. Resident Evil Requiem, Pragmata, 007 First Light, Indiana Jones, and The Great Circle, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. AAA releases now treat Nintendo hardware as a launch platform instead of an afterthought. Ports to the original Switch worked as stunts. 4 GB of memory, 720 pixels in handheld mode, and a chip already old at launch. Panic Button rebuilt the Doom renderer in Vulkan to hit 30 frames. Saber Interactive squeezed 35 GB of The Witcher 3 onto a 28 GB cartridge. Studios called those impossible ports, and the name fit. Switch 2 changes the equation. Nintendo built it around a custom NVIDIA system on a chip with an Ampere-based GPU, offering roughly 3 teraflops of performance while docked, along with hardware ray tracing and DLSS upscaling. More importantly than the raw numbers, DLSS lets games render at a lower internal resolution before reconstructing the final image, recovering the frame budget that made so many Switch 1 ports impossible. Sandfall Interactive spent 2026 fielding one question about Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. The studio wants to bring the game to Switch 2, but describes the project as a major technical challenge, noting that many of the game's features currently don't work on the hardware. The team is also closely following Unreal Engine updates, including lighter versions of Lumen, to see which features may eventually become viable. Lumen and Nanite carry that cost. Lumen computes global illumination in real time instead of reading baked light maps. Nanite streams geometry at a density no artist budgeted by hand. Both assume memory bandwidth and GPU headroom a portable chip cannot supply. Stripping them out means rebuilding the lighting model of the game, rebaking every scene, reworking shaders, and cutting geometry until the frame holds. Games built in Unreal Engine 4 tend to reach the platform with less friction, even when they look sharper than the ones that stall. Engine architecture predicts porting difficulty better than visual fidelity does. Publishers do this because the math is hard to argue with. A new AAA game takes 4 to 6 years and a budget that can pass $200 million. A port ships inside a quarter, built on a catalog that already earned back its costs, aimed at more than 20 million consoles that arrived in 13 months. That explains the shape of the 2026 slate. Elden Ring, Tarnished Edition, The Elder Scrolls 4, Oblivion Remastered, Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, Volume 2. Known sellers, priced again on hardware that never played them. Nintendo built a second lane for its own catalog. Switch 2 edition upgrades take Breath of the Wild, Metroid Prime 4, and Animal Crossing, New Horizons, and rework them for the new hardware below the price of a full release. Owners of the originals pay the difference. The old library carries forward, and the 156 million people holding a Switch 1 get a reason to move. Every one of those releases needs engineers who know the platform. 2 things stand between a publisher's decision and a shipped port. The first is access. Console development requires registration as a platform developer and a dev kit, and Nintendo has been rationing Switch 2 kits since launch, prioritizing studios whose games need the power. Plenty of teams spent early 2026 waiting. The second is certification. Nintendo runs Lotcheck, Sony runs TRC, Microsoft runs XR. Each one sets standards for frame rate floors, memory budgets, controller behavior, suspend and resume, error handling, fail one line item and the build comes back. Each review takes weeks, and studios collect a dozen rejections before they clear, so publishers hand the work to teams that already hold the kits, already know what Lotcheck rejects, and already ran the pipeline on other titles. Those teams rarely appear on the box. They rebuild the renderer, cut the draw calls, remap the controls, resize the UI for handheld reading distance, and sit through certification while the publisher plans the marketing beat. The gold rush you see on the storefront runs on that layer. The Switch 2 opened a market for games that already exist. That market stays open while the install base grows, and it pays the studios that treat a port as production instead of a recompile. Kevuru Games ports titles across PC, consoles, and mobile in Unreal, Unity, Godot, and custom engines. Code audit, performance optimization, asset and lighting adaptation, control and UI rework, certification, and post-release support. Our console port of Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 took 7 months and more than 10 specialists, with 4 console versions certified one at a time. It won an Xbox Excellence Award in 2025. Publishers decide which platform to chase. Engineers decide whether the game holds up once it gets there. 13 years of shipping across platforms and a team that has been through certification enough times to know what comes back.